The sun hadn't even risen when Private Alina Morales stepped onto the dusty, uneven firing range at Fort Hawthorne. The early morning fog clung to the ground, curling around the rifle targets like ghostly fingers. Her uniform, freshly pressed, still smelled faintly of starch and new fabric, too pristine for the grit that awaited her. She adjusted the strap of her rifle, fingers trembling ever so slightly, and felt a wave of doubt wash over her. She had trained for this moment for years, or at least she thought she had. Years of push-ups, long runs, and mental drills, all designed to steel her mind and body. But nothing had prepared her for the weight of expectation resting on her shoulders. As the newest recruit in Bravo Company, she knew every pair of eyes was on her. Some filled with curiosity, some with doubt, and some with barely disguised contempt. Alina scanned the line of soldiers beside her. There was Corporal Jenkins, the seasoned marksman whose reputation alone could intimidate the most confident rookie. He raised an eyebrow at her, the faintest smirk on his weathered face. Then there was Private First Class Raymond, a lanky kid from Ohio who had already earned a reputation for sarcastic remarks and whispered jokes. Alina felt their gazes piercing her, judging her every move, noting her hesitation. The whistle blew, slicing through the morning air. Staff Sergeant Ricks barked orders with the precision of a man who had seen too many mistakes cost lives. "Positions," he shouted. Alina's stomach twisted as she stepped forward, the rifle heavy against her shoulder, almost alien in her grasp. She forced herself to focus, to breathe. 1, 2, 3 steps. Her boots sank slightly into the muddy patches along the range, and she felt the first prickle of panic creep up her spine. She lined up the sights on the first target, took a deep breath, and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out sharp, echoing in the cool morning air. She missed. Her heart leapt into her throat as the target stayed untouched, the bullet embedding itself harmlessly into the dirt beside it. A whisper ran down the line of soldiers. She could feel it, almost taste it, a mix of judgment, disappointment, and pity. Jenkins' smirk widened just slightly. PFC Raymond muttered something, probably sarcastic, probably about her rookie nerves. Again, Ricks barked. His eyes were sharp, almost predatory, scanning every twitch, every tremor. Alina swallowed hard, shaking her head slightly to dispel the tremors and raised the rifle again. She tried to steady her breathing. 1, 2, 3. Exhale, sight, trigger. And again she missed. A murmur rippled through the line. Some soldiers shifted, trying not to laugh, trying not to gawk. Alina's ears rang, not with the echo of gunfire, but with the mounting pressure of failure. Ricks slammed a hand on the table beside her. "Morales," he roared, his voice cutting through the fog like a knife. "You panic like that in combat, someone dies. Do you want that on your conscience?" Her chest tightened. Her mind raced. She imagined herself on a real battlefield, bullets flying, comrades depending on her. Could she really do it? Could she make the split-second decisions that decided life and death? Her fingers gripped the rifle tighter, white-knuckled, yet trembling. She forced herself to raise it again, feeling the sweat on her palms mix with the cool morning mist. A memory flashed unbidden in her mind. The night she had tried to shield her younger brother from the chaos of their father's drunken rages, only to fail. The feeling of helplessness, the choking fear, the desperation, it all came rushing back. And suddenly she was no longer just on a firing range. She was 11 years old, trying to protect someone she loved and failing. Her body froze. She couldn't move. The rifle felt like 100 pounds of cold metal in her hands. Rick's voice pierced through the storm in her mind. "Move, Morales." And she didn't. The line of soldiers shifted nervously, the judgment heavy in the air. Alina felt every pair of eyes on her. Every heartbeat in the morning fog seemed to echo her own panic. She lowered the rifle, cheeks burning with shame and frustration. It wasn't just the miss. It was the revelation that she might not belong. The thought was terrifying. She had fought tooth and nail to get here, endured months of grueling physical and mental training, and yet here she was, freezing under pressure, a liability to herself and eventually to the people she was supposed to protect. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to regain composure. The sound of rifles snapping in quick succession along the line was deafening. Soldiers were hitting their marks. They were executing drills she had studied and imagined herself performing flawlessly. And here she was, trembling in the mist, unable to fire a single accurate shot. A few moments later, Rix barked for the line to advance to the next target. Alina forced herself to her feet, legs unsteady, mud squelching beneath her boots. She took her position at the next station, rifle raised, eyes wide and panicked. She fired again, miss and again, miss. The whispers had become audible now, slicing into her ears. Jenkins shook his head slightly, muttering, "She's green, way too green." Raymond smirked, though it was unclear if he was amused or genuinely worried. Rix leaned close, eyes sharp. "Morales, listen to me. You will freeze in combat if you don't fix this. Your panic will get someone killed. Understand?" "Yes, Sergeant," she whispered, voice barely audible. "Good, then prove you belong here." But proving it seemed impossible. The rifle felt heavier with every attempt. Her mind raced in a cyclone of fear and self-doubt. She could hear the static of nerves in her head, drowning out focus, drowning out strategy, drowning out calm. And yet beneath all the panic, a flicker of determination remained. A stubborn, defiant spark. Alina had survived worse. She had faced life-threatening challenges long before the army, from broken homes to nights where food was scarce. She wasn't going to let this define her. Not yet. As she raised the rifle again, squinting through the sights, the weight of every judgmental gaze pressed down. But now, a sliver of focus began to pierce the panic. One steady breath, one eye on the target, one decision at a time. It was only the beginning. Because in a few days, that panic, the one she fought so hard to suppress, would not be a target range problem. It would be life or death, and she would have to confront it in a way no drill or instructor could prepare her for. The morning mist swirled around her. She fired. Another miss. But this time she didn't lower her rifle immediately. Her hands were still shaking, heart still racing, but there was a shift, a tiny, almost imperceptible shift in how she faced her fear. And as the squad moved to the next drill, Alina Morales walked forward with the heavy burden of doubt on her shoulders, unaware that her real test was about to arrive. Not on the range, not under the watchful eyes of skeptical soldiers, but somewhere far deadlier, where hesitation could cost more than just pride. Because the first crack in her armor had appeared. And it would either shatter her or forge her into something stronger than anyone, including herself, expected. 3 weeks after that humbling morning on the firing range, Bravo Company found themselves deep in the Arkansas backwoods for a routine reconnaissance exercise. Routine, at least in the paperwork. Routine in the sterile, safe way soldiers like to tell themselves. But the forest had other plans. The early morning mist clung to every branch, dripping down onto their uniforms. Trees towered like ancient sentinels, the air thick with the scent of wet pine and mud. The ground beneath their boots had turned slick after last night's rain, and the fog reduced visibility to barely 10 feet in some spots. For Alina, who had struggled under the pressure of live firing on a controlled range, this was a battlefield from the first step. Staff Sergeant Rix led the way, leaning on his experience to navigate the treacherous terrain. His eyes scanned constantly, scanning every shadow and movement. Behind him, the squad moved like a single organism, boots squelching in rhythm. Alina trailed near the rear, struggling to keep pace. Each step sent a shiver through her body, the cold seeping through her uniform, the mud sucking at her boots. She glanced at the others. Jenkins led a small group in front, calm and precise, methodical. Raymond huffed behind her, muttering under his breath, clearly frustrated by the mud and the chill. Everyone seemed in control, everyone except Alina. Then it happened. A flash of lightning split the sky. Thunder followed almost instantly, a deafening boom that seemed to shake the very ground. Rain began to fall, first in thin sheets, then in torrents. Visibility dropped even further. The terrain became a treacherous maze of mud, fallen logs, and slick rocks. And that's when Staff Sergeant Ricks twisted his ankle on a hidden root, falling hard into the mud. The squad froze, the chaos of the storm and terrain colliding into a single moment of panic. Ricks grimaced, trying to push himself up, but the sharp pain shot through his leg and he collapsed again. "Alina, help him," shouted Jenkins, bending down to support him. Alina moved forward, hands slick with mud as she grasped Rick's arm. The officer gritted his teeth, muttering curses under his breath. "We can't stay here, move," he growled. The squad attempted to regroup behind a clump of dense trees, but the storm seemed almost sentient, lashing rain into their faces, washing away any sense of orientation. And then it came. The first gunshot. A sharp, terrifying crack that was unmistakable amidst the thunder. Alina froze. Her stomach dropped. "Did anyone else hear that?" Raymond whispered, voice barely audible. Another crack rang out, then another, faster, closer. This wasn't thunder. This was live fire. "Fire!" someone shouted. Panic erupted. Soldiers ducked instinctively, hearts hammering. Ricks, still grimacing in pain, tried to shout orders, but his voice barely carried over the storm. Alina's mind shut down for a moment. She remembered the firing range. She remembered missing targets. She remembered the burning shame of being the weakest link. And suddenly, all of that terror returned in a flood, this time amplified. She could hear Jenkins barking instructions, Raymond screaming, bullets ricocheting off rocks and trees around them. Mud sprayed into her face as she dived behind a fallen log, rifle clutched tightly, trembling hands threatening to betray her at every second. And then came the worst sound, a scream, sharp and terrified, cutting through the rain. It was Ricks. He had tried to take cover, but a stray round had grazed him across the side. His uniform was soaked with blood, his face pale and drawn. He could breathe barely, but he couldn't stand. The squad was leaderless, stranded in the storm, pinned by unseen shooters. Everyone looked around, confused and terrified, searching for a plan. A storm of fear crashed into Alina, paralyzing her. Her fingers shook around the rifle grip. Her heart thumped erratically, threatening to drown out her thoughts. And then a faint voice, weak but insistent, cut through the panic. "Don't freeze, not now." It was Ricks, his eyes, half-lidded in pain, locked onto Alina. "Don't freeze, not now." The words were almost a whisper against the roar of rain and gunfire, but they struck her like a thunderclap in her mind. Not freeze, not now. Alina swallowed hard, forcing her body to move even when her mind screamed otherwise. She crawled closer to him, kneeling in the mud beside her injured sergeant. "Tell me what to do," she said, voice shaking but clear enough to be heard. Ricks tried to speak, but only a rasp emerged. Then with a faint, strained nod, he whispered, "No, you tell them, lead now." Alina's heart slammed against her ribs. The squad's eyes had already started to wander toward her, the unspoken question hovering. If the newest recruit, the one who froze on the range, was to lead, would they survive? She took a deep breath, tasting the mud and rain and adrenaline in her lungs. "Listen," she shouted over the storm, her voice cracking at first, then steadying. "We regroup here, cover the northeast slope, move in pairs and stay low." The soldiers hesitated. Jenkins frowned, disbelief etched across his face. She's just a rookie. How do we know?" "Alina," Raymond snapped, "do you even know what you're doing?" Alina's hands tightened around the rifle. She stared at him. "If we don't move now, we're sitting ducks. Trust me or don't, but we move now." The squad exchanged glances, uncertainty battling instinct. Then, slowly, one by one, they nodded, relying on her decisiveness, on the fact that hesitation now could cost their lives. Alina signaled the movement. Soldiers slid through mud, slipping, clawing at roots and branches, each step a test of courage and balance. The storm screamed around them, masking movement and amplifying every sound, every snap of a twig, every splash of mud, every strained breath. As they moved, Alina listened, not just to the storm, not just to the crack of gunfire, but to the rhythm of the enemy, sporadic, imprecise, scattered. They weren't professionals. They were reckless amateurs, dangerous, yes, but flawed. She could exploit that. Her mind, racing at a speed she didn't know it possessed, calculated trajectories, distances, and angles. She gave quiet, precise instructions. Flank left, suppressing fire, don't expose your position. The soldiers followed, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence as Alina's calm assertiveness took hold. Through the rain, through the chaos, Alina Morales, the recruit who had panicked on the firing range, was slowly becoming the commander they needed. But the forest was unforgiving. The storm was relentless. And somewhere in the shadows, the shooters were still out there, adapting, circling, waiting. Alina's first true test of leadership and courage was just beginning. And she had no idea if she would survive it. The first shots had been jarring, unnerving, but nothing could have prepared Bravo Company for the chaos that erupted next. Lightning split the sky again, illuminating the rain-soaked forest like a strobe light in a nightmare. The trees seemed taller, their branches heavier, dripping with relentless sheets of rain. The muddy ground had become a quagmire, sucking boots down, making every step a struggle. And over it all, the sharp, staccato sound of gunfire rang out again, closer, faster, more precise. Alina's stomach tightened. Her pulse skyrocketed. Every muscle in her body screamed to flee, to hide, to collapse and let the world crash around her. But she didn't. Not yet. She was pinned behind a fallen log, rifle clutched in trembling hands, and for the first time she realized just how thin the line was between training and real death. "Live fire," someone screamed, barely audible over thunder and wind. The squad scattered, diving for cover wherever they could find it. The ground exploded with splintering bark as bullets ripped into trees. Every shadow could hide an enemy, every movement could signal a threat. Rix tried to bark orders, but the pain in his side twisted his voice into a strained rasp. Move, cover, suppress. His eyes scanned frantically, but he was limited, immobilized by injury. Alina's chest heaved. She wanted to sink into the mud, to curl into herself and pretend none of this was real. But she couldn't. Not with Rix hurt, not with the squad scrambling around her, panicked and exposed. A shout came from Jenkins. "We're pinned, they're flanking." Bullets ricocheted off rocks nearby. Mud sprayed into her face. Rain stung her eyes. She blinked rapidly, trying to make sense of the chaos, trying to find a path, any path that could keep them alive. Then the scream came, a sharp, terrified cry that sliced through the storm. It was Rix. Alina froze for a moment, paralyzed by fear. She remembered the firing range, remembered her trembling hands, remembered failing when she'd vowed never to fail again. And now the reality of it had returned, multiplied, a horrifying physical presence. She wanted to look away, she wanted to collapse, but then Rick's voice broke through, weak but urgent. "Don't freeze, not now." Those 3 words ignited something in her. Not fear, not panic, not hesitation, something else. A spark, small but persistent, that flared into determination. Alina's hands gripped the rifle tighter, and for the first time in weeks she felt clarity through the storm of chaos. She wasn't just a recruit. She wasn't just someone who froze under pressure. She was the closest person to the squad leader at that moment. If she didn't act, the chaos would swallow them all. She crawled toward Rix, sliding in mud, breath burning in her lungs. "Tell me what to do," she shouted, voice shaking but carrying enough authority to be heard. Rix tried to speak, lips moving, but only a rasp emerged. Then, with a pained nod, he whispered, "No, you lead, you decide." Her heart skipped a beat. The weight of every life in the squad landed squarely on her shoulders. Alina glanced at the soldiers, their faces pale, eyes wide, drenched in mud and rain. They were looking to her, uncertain and terrified, for direction. Alina swallowed hard, forcing herself upright. Listen, we regroup at the fallen ridge, cover northeast, move in pairs, keep low. Are you serious? Raymond shouted. You can't lead us. Jenkins froze, incredulous. She's just a rookie, she doesn't. Alina, someone barked, panic in their voice. We're sitting ducks here. She swallowed the tremor in her voice and shouted louder. If we don't move now, we're dead. Move. For a tense, agonizing second, no one moved. The storm drowned out their thoughts and the bullets continued their deadly rhythm. Then slowly, the squad began to follow her. Boots slipped in mud. Soldiers ducked and rolled. They moved as one unit, fragile but coordinated, driven by the authority she projected, even if she barely felt it. As they advanced through the forest, Alina's mind raced. She listened, truly listened to the enemy. They weren't trained shooters. Their aim was scattered. Their shots came in irregular bursts. They were dangerous, yes, but unskilled, chaotic. And if she could exploit that, she could guide her squad to survival. A branch snapped somewhere to her right, and a bullet struck the tree near Jenkins' head, splintering it into shards. Alina yanked him down behind cover, heart hammering. Stay low, move fast, she barked. The soldiers obeyed, fear giving way to action. For the first time, they trusted her decisiveness. And Alina, for the first time in her life, trusted herself. But then another shot cracked out. Closer this time. Someone's rifle barrel glinted in the lightning flash. A civilian shooter, amateur but deadly. The enemy was repositioning, circling, trying to trap them. Alina's stomach lurched. Her first instinct was to freeze, to curl up in the mud, to let the storm and bullets claim her, but she couldn't. She had to move and she had to lead. She rose slightly enough to get a better vantage point, ignoring the rain stinging her eyes, the mud soaking her uniform, the bullets ripping past her ears. Her pulse roared in her head, but she could focus now. She calculated angles, distances, cover points. She barked instructions. Flank left, suppressing fire, avoid exposure. The squad moved as she commanded, slipping and sliding through mud, following her into a narrow ridge that provided partial cover. The bullets thudded around them, striking trees, rocks, and mud, but none found flesh. Alina's hands were numb, her face streaked with rain and grime, but her mind had never been sharper. She realized something terrifying and exhilarating. She could do this. She could lead. She had to lead. The enemy, startled by the sudden, coordinated movement, hesitated. Alina's heart hammered. One wrong move, one misjudged step, and they would all be dead. But the hesitation gave her a sliver of opportunity. She signaled her squad to hold position. The storm seemed to pause around them, almost in recognition of the tension, almost as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Alina crouched, scanning the tree line, listening to the rhythm of shots, the spacing, the direction. She realized the enemy's weakness, scattered, amateur, predictable under pressure. Her lips moved silently in concentration. She whispered orders precise and deliberate, flank left, suppressing fire. Do not expose yourselves, watch your angles. The squad obeyed without question, their faith in her growing with every move, every decision she made. And as she glanced toward the enemy, heart hammering, rain blinding, adrenaline coursing through her veins, she understood the terrifying truth. This was only the beginning. The storm raged around them. Bullets ricocheted like deadly hail, and Alina Morales, once the recruit who panicked under pressure, was now standing at the center of a battlefield she had never imagined. She didn't feel invincible. She didn't feel safe. But for the first time, she felt ready. And the next moment, the world exploded. Another gunshot cracked out, louder, closer, and a bullet ricocheted off a rock inches from her head, sending a spray of mud into her face. She flinched. Her squad flinched. And somewhere in the forest, hidden in the shadows, the enemy was adapting, circling, and waiting. Alina took a deep breath, gritted her teeth, and prepared to do what she never thought she could. Because the panic that had haunted her for weeks, the panic that had once made her freeze, was about to collide with the need to survive. And only one would emerge in command. The storm didn't relent. It battered the forest relentlessly, slamming rain and mud into every exposed surface. The wind twisted branches into whipping tendrils that clawed at soldiers' uniforms. Thunder rolled across the hills, each peal reverberating through Alina's chest like a drum of doom. And in the midst of it, the squad's reality had shifted. Staff Sergeant Rix was down. His side was a dark smear of blood soaked through his uniform. He tried to rise, tried to shout orders over the storm, but his face twisted with pain. Every breath he drew was ragged, a shallow rasp. "Alina, you need to," he gasped, but the words broke, drowned in the roar of wind and gunfire. The squad froze for a fraction of a second, paralyzed by disbelief. The man who had commanded them with authority, who had barked and pushed and demanded perfection, was now helpless, his life teetering on the edge. "Move, move now," Alina yelled instinctively, but the command faltered under the weight of her own fear. Her chest heaved. The adrenaline that had steadied her before now pulsed like a second heartbeat, threatening to break her concentration. Bullets continued to tear through the forest. The enemy was circling, moving with unpredictable, reckless aggression. One soldier was hit in the shoulder by a grazing round. Pain, terror, and confusion collided in a storm as relentless as the weather around them. "Stand down," someone shouted. "Retreat," another screamed. Voices rose and fell, overlapping, clashing, chaotic. And in the middle of it all, Alina realized the horrifying truth. No one else could lead. Jenkins, normally calm and collected, was crouched behind a fallen log, eyes wide, looking to her as if seeking guidance. Raymond was trembling, gripping his rifle like a lifeline. They were all waiting, all counting on her. Alina's stomach twisted. Her mind screamed. She was just a recruit, a rookie. She had panicked before. She had failed before. What if she froze again? What if everyone died because of her indecision? She swallowed hard. The forest seemed to close in around her. Every raindrop, every bullet, every gust of wind pressed against her chest. And then, above all the chaos, came Rick's faint, strained voice. "Don't freeze, not now." His words were fragile, almost gone, but they ignited something deep inside her. Not fear, not hesitation, something else, responsibility, awareness, courage. She realized in that moment that the panic she had fought to suppress her entire life would have to be harnessed and transformed, or everyone would die. Alina dropped to her knees beside Rick's, sliding mud into her uniform. She pressed her hands to his wound, trying to assess the damage, trying to stabilize him enough to think clearly. He looked at her with eyes half-lidded in pain, as if silently granting her permission to step up. "Tell me what to do," she said, voice trembling but firm enough to cut through the storm. Rix tried to speak, lips moving, but only a shallow rasp emerged. Then with a nod he managed, "No, you lead." The weight of command slammed into her. Every life in the squad, every ounce of training, every mistake from the past few weeks, all of it, compressed into this single, overwhelming moment. Alina swallowed the lump in her throat, pushed the fear aside, and rose to her feet. "Listen to me," she shouted over the storm, heart hammering. "We regroup here, we move northeast to the ridge. Cover fire when I signal, keep low, stay together." The squad stared. Mud streaked their faces, rain pouring down in torrents, rifles shaking in their hands. They were exhausted, terrified, unsure. And yet they had no choice but to follow. Jenkins muttered under his breath, disbelief etched in every line of his face. "She's just a recruit. She can't." "Yes, I can," Alina shot back, her voice louder, sharper. "Follow me or we all die. Your choice." Raymond looked at her, eyes wide, uncertain. But then, slowly, he nodded. The rest of the squad followed suit. Alina signaled, and they moved. Every step was a challenge. The mud sucked at their boots, the branches tore at their uniforms, and the bullets cracked and ricocheted like deadly hail. Alina led from the front, scanning constantly for movement, listening to every sound, every snap of twig, every footstep, every irregularity in the rhythm of gunfire. She adjusted their path in real time, ducking behind cover, signaling suppressing fire, instructing them on angles and flanks. It was terrifying, chaotic, and utterly consuming. And yet, Alina found a rhythm, a flow. Her fear didn't vanish, it sharpened her senses. Her trembling hands steadied, her mind focused, and her voice, once shaky, now carried authority. The squad moved as a unit, responding to her commands. They no longer flinched at every shot, no longer hesitated. They were listening, reacting, surviving. Alina glanced back at Rix, lying in the mud, pain etched into every line of his face. She swallowed. "You'll be okay," she whispered. Not just to him, but to herself. She had to believe it. The storm continued its fury, yet amid the chaos a strange clarity emerged. Alina's panic, the same panic that had nearly shattered her on the firing range, was now tempered by necessity. It had become purpose. She had a mission, a responsibility, a squad depending on her. And the realization hit her like a lightning strike. She could lead. She could save them. The enemy, hidden somewhere in the shadows of the forest, continued to circle, reposition, attempt flanking maneuvers. But Alina was no longer paralyzed. She calculated their movements, predicted their positions, and issued precise orders. 2 on the left flank, suppress. Jenkins, cover the right. Raymond, keep low and move forward. The squad responded without hesitation. Every command was executed, not perfectly, but enough to survive. Bullets whizzed past, striking trees and mud, splintering branches. The rain soaked them, the cold gnawed at them, but they moved with growing confidence under her direction. For Alina, the terror never fully disappeared. It lingered, a constant reminder of the stakes. But it was no longer a prison. It was a fuel. Every heartbeat, every shiver, every drop of adrenaline sharpened her senses, honed her instincts. By the time the squad reached a relatively secure ridge, partially shielded from enemy fire, Alina's chest was heaving, her muscles trembling, her clothes soaked and clinging. She sank to her knees behind a fallen log, eyes scanning the forest. The squad looked at her with something she hadn't expected: trust. They weren't looking at the new recruit who panicked under fire anymore. They were looking at the soldier who had kept them alive, who had taken command when everyone else faltered. Rix groaned from behind her, pain radiating from his wound. Alina pressed her hands to it again, murmuring reassurances. He nodded faintly, exhausted but alive. Alina looked out over the forest, rain pelting her face, bullets still cracking in the distance. She realized for the first time the terrifying beauty of leadership under fire. The fear never went away. The danger never disappeared. But clarity emerged amidst chaos, and with it, purpose. The storm still raged. The enemy still circled. And Alina Morales, the recruit who had trembled under pressure just weeks ago, now understood something profound. The moment leadership falls, true strength rises. And she was rising. But the enemy wasn't done, not yet. Another flash of movement in the tree line caught her eye. Another shadow, another threat closing in. Alina's heart jumped. She rose, ready to act, ready to command, ready to fight. Because she had no choice. And in that instant, the squad realized something terrifying and exhilarating. The new recruit wasn't just surviving, she was leading. And the storm, the bullets, the chaos, they were about to test her in ways she could never have imagined. The rain fell in sheets, drenching Bravo Company to the bone, turning the forest floor into a slick, treacherous mess. Mud clung to their boots, making every step a struggle. Rainwater ran down their necks and into their eyes, stinging, blurring vision. Lightning split the sky overhead, followed by booming thunder that seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. And yet, amidst the chaos, Alina Morales stood upright, rifle in hand, scanning the trees. Every inch of the forest was alive with danger. Every shadow could conceal a gun, every branch could hide a sniper's barrel. Her squad crouched behind makeshift cover, mud-streaked, soaked, exhausted, their faces pale with fear. Their leader, Staff Sergeant Ricks, lay on the ground behind her, bleeding from a wound in his side, barely conscious. Alina swallowed hard. The weight of command pressed on her like a physical force. Every life in the squad, Jenkins, Raymond, and the rest, depended on her decisions now, and the storm wasn't waiting. "Listen up," Alina shouted over the roar of rain and wind. Her voice cracked at first but grew louder, steadier. "We're pinned. The shooters are northeast 2, maybe 3. East slope has better cover. We move there on my signal. Stay low, stay together. No one goes rogue, got it?" The squad stared at her, disbelief mixed with terror. Jenkins, always the skeptic, muttered, "We don't even know if that's the right direction." "How do you know?" Alina's eyes didn't waver. "Because I can hear them, track their positions, follow me or stay here and pray." Raymond's jaw tightened. She's just a recruit," he spat. "We can't." "Move," Alina cut him off sharply. Her voice rang with authority, a command that brooked no argument. The storm and bullets demanded obedience, not debate. The squad hesitated only for a moment. Then, one by one, they began to follow her, crawling and sliding through the mud, ducking under low branches, pressing against trees for cover. Alina led from the front, carefully gauging the enemy's position with every step. Bullets whizzed past, thudding into trees and mud around them, a constant reminder that any misstep could be fatal. The northeast slope came into view, partially shielded by a thicket of trees and a series of fallen logs. It wasn't perfect cover, but it was better than staying where they were. Alina signaled the squad to hold. "On my mark, we advance. Keep low. Suppress if necessary, but don't take unnecessary risks. Everyone stay alert." Jenkins muttered again under his breath, "I can't believe we're listening to her." Alina's eyes narrowed. "Believe it or die here." The squad moved as she signaled, crawling through mud and debris, hearts pounding. Alina's mind raced, calculating angles, distances, enemy positions. Every snap of a twig, every irregular burst of gunfire, every shift in the storm's roar, all of it became data she processed instantly, intuitively. "Left flank, suppress them," she barked, pointing to the soldiers on the edge. "Jenkins, cover fire. Raymond, move to the front. Watch for angles. Everyone else follow my lead." The soldiers obeyed. Mud and rain sprayed as they shifted positions, suppressing fire, keeping the enemy pinned. Alina moved alongside them, guiding, correcting, adjusting. She felt fear bubbling under her skin, but it was now a tool, not a weakness. It sharpened her senses, made her movements quicker, her commands clearer. They reached a fallen tree that offered partial protection. Alina pressed herself against it, assessing their position. The enemy, 3 shooters, inexperienced but armed, was visible through the rain-smeared foliage. They were trying to circle the squad, flanking from the northeast. Alina's mind snapped into rapid calculations. If they moved too soon, they'd be exposed. If they stayed, bullets would find them. She needed a plan that leveraged their terrain advantage, minimized risk, and exploited the enemy's mistakes. "2 on the left flank," she whispered urgently. "Suppressing fire. Do not expose yourselves. We push forward together on my count." The squad obeyed, sliding through mud and rain, moving like a single organism. Every command from Alina was executed with precision, born of necessity, fear, and determination. Suddenly, one of the shooters moved unexpectedly, raising his rifle and taking aim at the squad. A bullet ricocheted off a tree dangerously close, sending splinters into Alina's face. Mud and rain mixed with adrenaline, stinging her eyes. She didn't flinch. She pressed her hands to her rifle, took a steadying breath, and shouted, "Now, advance, cover each other, stay low." The squad surged forward, moving as one under her guidance. Suppressing fire forced the enemy to dive for cover. The bullets that had threatened them moments before now missed their marks, bouncing harmlessly into mud and bark. Alina's voice cut through the storm, precise and commanding. Left flank move up. Right flank maintain position and cover. Jenkins provide suppressing fire. Raymond assist the wounded if needed but stay alive. Everyone else follow me to the ridge. The soldiers obeyed, sliding and scrambling over roots and rocks, mud soaking through every layer of clothing. The forest was chaos incarnate. The storm, the gunfire, the screaming wind, and the distant crashes of trees torn by lightning. But Alina's commands brought order to the chaos. And for the first time since joining Bravo Company, the squad began to trust her. They didn't just follow orders, they moved with confidence, relying on her judgment in a life-or-death scenario. The enemy, sensing the shift, tried to adapt. They moved, attempting to reposition, but Alina anticipated their pattern. She signaled her squad to hold, suppress, and prepare for a countermove. Alina's body was trembling. Every muscle burned with exhaustion. Her lungs burned from exertion. Rain and mud plastered her hair to her forehead, but her mind was clear, razor-sharp. Every heartbeat, every tremor, every shred of fear was now harnessed into action. The northeast slope offered a vantage point. From here, Alina could observe the enemy, coordinate her squad's movements, and anticipate the next attack. She pressed her hands to Rick's wound briefly, ensuring he remained stable, then turned her full attention to the forest. "They're trying to flank us again," she shouted. "Hold your positions, cover each other, suppress." The bullets continued to fly, but now the squad was no longer scattered. They moved as a unit. They reacted to her orders, executed strategies she formulated on the fly. Alina's fear was still there, sharp and biting, but it was a tool, not a prison. And then she realized something terrifying and exhilarating. She had become the leader. The new recruit who had panicked on the firing range was now directing her squad under live fire, making split-second decisions that kept them alive. Every decision carried weight. Every command was critical. Alina took a breath, the cold rain burning her lungs, and raised her voice above the storm. "Move forward in pairs. Suppress if necessary. We take the ridge and hold. We survive this together." Her squad responded instantly, moving with a fluid coordination born of trust in her authority. The enemy fired sporadically, but their scattered aim and poor positioning left openings Alina exploited. Slowly, methodically, they advanced toward the ridge, inch by muddy inch. Every second was a test of courage, instinct, and trust. Every movement could mean life or death. And Alina, drenched, mud-streaked, and trembling, realized something profound. The moment of panic, the fear that had nearly broken her weeks ago, had forged her into something stronger. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. And the forest, storm, and enemy fire all seemed to recognize it. The ridge was within reach. The squad moved as one, guided by her commands, suppressed by her authority, and buoyed by a newfound confidence that none of them expected from a recruit. But the storm and the enemy were far from finished. Every step forward brought new dangers, new decisions, and new tests of courage. Alina Morales, the girl who had once frozen on the firing range, was about to face the ultimate trial. And this time there would be no second chances. The northeast ridge loomed ahead, jagged and slick with rain, a small promise of safety amid the chaos. Every step toward it felt like crawling through a nightmare. The mud tugged at boots, branches whipped at faces, and the storm screamed in every direction. But Alina Morales pressed forward, her grip tight on her rifle, eyes sharp, mind racing. The squad moved behind her, fluid but tense, following every command, every gesture, every whispered order. The enemy remained scattered but dangerous, their positions partially concealed by rain-soaked foliage. Bullets pinged off trees and rocks around them, sending splintered shards into the mud and air. Each ricochet reminded Alina how fragile life was in this forest, how small a margin existed between survival and catastrophe. She glanced back at Rick's, still struggling to stabilize himself behind a fallen log, blood staining his uniform. Her stomach knotted with guilt and fear, but she had no time to dwell. The squad needed her, not him, not the storm, not chance. Her decisions would decide whether they lived or died. "Advance in pairs," she barked over the roar of rain. "Jenkins, cover the left. Raymond, cover the right. Suppress if necessary, but don't expose yourselves." The soldiers obeyed instantly, moving like clockwork, their trust in her growing with every coordinated motion. Alina's fear hadn't vanished, it had sharpened into hyper-awareness. Every snap of a twig, every distant crack of gunfire, every shifting shadow became critical information. Then, without warning, the enemy fired a volley from the ridge above them. The bullets tore through trees and mud, one striking a rock mere inches from Alina's boot. Mud sprayed into her face. Heart pounding, she pressed herself low, instinctively calculating angles. "Take cover," she shouted. "Move left, keep low, don't stop." The squad slid behind the nearest logs and rocks, suppressing fire as they went. Jenkins muttered under his breath, incredulous. She's actually leading us." "Yes," Alina snapped, not out of pride but urgency. "Follow my lead, move now." The rain pounded harder. Visibility was near zero. Every movement risked exposing them to enemy fire, yet staying put would be fatal. Alina's mind worked at a frenetic pace, calculating risk and opportunity with precision honed by sheer necessity. "Two on the left flank," she commanded, pointing to the soldiers at the edge. "Suppressing fire, draw their attention, the rest of us push up the ridge." Her instructions were executed immediately. Two soldiers on the left opened fire, bullets ripping into the trees, forcing the enemy to duck and adjust. That split-second distraction gave the rest of the squad the opening they needed. Alina led the push, sliding up the slope, mud soaking her uniform, rain blinding her. Each step was a struggle, but determination burned hotter than fatigue. The soldiers followed, keeping low, moving in pairs, suppressing when necessary, trusting her implicitly. A flash of movement caught her eye. An enemy combatant attempted to flank them from the right, rifle aimed. Alina raised her voice. "Right flank, suppress. Jenkins, take the shot if he moves." The shot rang out precise, accurate. The enemy faltered, ducking behind cover. Alina seized the moment. "Move now, push forward, don't stop." The squad surged forward, inching closer to the ridge's summit. Alina's lungs burned, heart racing, muscles screaming, but her mind remained sharp. Every instinct, every training exercise, every memory of fear now guided her actions. "Halfway there," she shouted. "Cover each other, watch angles, we survive together." Bullets continued to fly, but now they were less threatening. Alina's suppression tactics, combined with the distraction from the left flank, forced the enemy into defensive positions. Each step forward was agony, but it was also progress. Suddenly, Jenkins stumbled, slipping on the slick mud. A bullet zipped past his head as he caught himself, eyes wide with terror. Alina lunged forward, grabbing his arm, yanking him behind cover. "Stay with me," she yelled. The squad began to rally around her. Fear was still present, but it was no longer paralyzing. It had transformed into focused action, a shared rhythm of survival. From her vantage point, Alina could see the enemy repositioning, attempting another flanking maneuver. Her heart pounded as she assessed their movements. They were inexperienced, reckless, but dangerous. One misstep could be fatal. "Suppressing fire," she barked. "Keep them pinned, don't let them move, flank them from both sides." The squad responded, opening fire strategically, forcing the enemy to remain in cover. Alina used the moment to signal movement toward the ridge's summit. Every step, every command, every action was critical. She felt a surge of adrenaline, terrifying and exhilarating all at once. They reached a partially sheltered outcrop, giving them a better vantage point. Alina pressed herself low, scanning the tree line for movement. Bullets continued to ping nearby, but the squad was finally beginning to control the situation. "Hold position," she commanded. "Watch for movement, stay low, keep suppressing fire if needed." Rix, barely conscious, managed a weak nod. Alina glanced back at him, swallowing the fear that threatened to claw its way back. She couldn't afford hesitation, not now, not when they were so close to survival. The enemy, realizing they were losing control, attempted a final push. 3 shooters emerged from cover, trying to flank from the northeast. Alina's mind raced. She had one chance to stop them, one opportunity to turn panic into strategy. "Left flank, engage, suppress, don't give them an inch," she shouted. The squad responded instantly, coordinated, precise, deadly. Bullets tore into the trees, forcing the enemy back into cover. Alina took a deep breath, raising her rifle, and fired a carefully calculated shot at a visible target. The enemy faltered, scrambling behind rocks. "Push now," she commanded. "Move forward, stay low." The soldiers surged, inching toward the ridge's summit, suppressing fire from multiple angles. The enemy's coordination began to collapse under Alina's quick thinking and decisive commands. Rain soaked her face, mud plastered her uniform, muscles screamed with exhaustion, but Alina pressed on. Every instinct, every training drill, every memory of fear guided her decisions. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the squad reached the ridge's summit. They pressed themselves behind rocks and fallen logs, catching their breath, mud-streaked and drenched. The enemy had been forced to retreat temporarily, disoriented by the unexpected leadership of the rookie at their helm. Alina sank to her knees, heart hammering, lungs burning. The squad gathered around her, looking exhausted, shaken, but alive. For the first time in hours, there was a moment of relative calm amid the storm. Jenkins muttered, disbelief still in his voice, "I can't believe we're alive because of her." Raymond nodded, mud dripping from his helmet. She led us. We survived." Alina didn't feel victorious. She felt the weight of what had just happened. She had commanded under fire, made life-or-death decisions, and kept her squad alive. But the storm wasn't over. The enemy could regroup. Rix was still wounded, and every second of respite was temporary. She pressed her hands to Rix's wound again, checking his condition. He nodded faintly, weak but alive. Alina looked out over the rain-soaked forest, bullets still flying sporadically in the distance. She realized, with a mix of fear and exhilaration, that she had changed. The panic that had once consumed her on the firing range had been transformed. It had forged her into a leader. And the forest, the storm, and the enemy all knew it. But survival wasn't guaranteed. The enemy was still out there. The storm was relentless, and the next decision she made could determine life or death. Alina Morales, the recruit who had once frozen under pressure, now understood something profound. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was acting in spite of it. And she was ready to act again. The rain had not eased. The forest, already treacherous and chaotic, had become an even more formidable obstacle. Mud slicked the slopes, rain turned tree roots into deadly tripwires, and every snap of a twig or splash of water set the squad's nerves on edge. Yet atop the ridge, Alina Morales stood, rifle ready, surveying both her squad and the enemy positions. The squad was battered but alive. Mud-plastered uniforms, rain-soaked hair clung to their faces, and exhaustion etched deep lines into their features. Yet their eyes, filled with a mix of fear and newfound trust, were fixed on Alina. For the first time, the rookie they had once dismissed as a liability had become their lifeline. Alina's chest heaved, muscles screaming from exertion, but her mind was laser-focused. They couldn't stay on the ridge forever. The enemy would regroup and strike again, possibly from multiple flanks. They needed to break free. She took a moment to scan the forest, observing the enemy's patterns. 3 shooters remained scattered in cover, trying to circle and pin them from the northeast and east. Their positions were visible, their mistakes glaring if one had the courage and precision to exploit them. Alina, Jenkins whispered, voice trembling. We can't go back down. They won't expect this, Alina interrupted, cutting through the fear in his voice. We're going to move forward, take the high ground across the ridge. It's risky, but it's the only way to survive. Trust me. The squad exchanged wary glances. Trusting a recruit had seemed impossible hours ago, but after watching her guide them through near-death fire, hesitation was replaced with something like resolve. All right, Raymond said, gripping his rifle tighter. We follow you, but if we die, it's on you. Alina's lips tightened. She couldn't afford the luxury of fear, not now. Then let's survive, move. She led the squad down a narrow path along the ridge, crouched low, scanning for movement. The enemy fired sporadic rounds, bullets slicing through rain and mud, pinging off rocks and logs. Each shot reminded them of the stakes, but Alina pressed forward with relentless determination. Two on the left flank, suppress, keep them pinned, she shouted. The rest of us advance, move low, move fast. The soldiers obeyed. Suppressing fire drew the enemy's attention, forcing them into defensive positions. Alina used the opening to maneuver the squad up the slope toward a second, higher ridge that offered better cover and a tactical advantage. The forest became a blur of mud, rain, and adrenaline. Every step was a calculated risk. Alina's mind worked faster than her pulse, anticipating enemy movements, calculating angles, and directing her squad with a precision that belied her rookie status. Suddenly, a shot rang out from the northeast. Raymond flinched, ducking low. Alina's heart skipped a beat as she assessed the threat. A second shooter had moved into a better position, attempting to intercept them. Suppressing fire left flank. Jenkins, keep pressure on the east. Don't stop, Alina barked. The squad responded instantly, bullets ripping into cover, forcing the enemy to remain hidden. Alina took the moment to push forward, leading the squad to a natural outcropping that offered partial cover and a line of sight to the enemy. Hold here, she commanded. Observe, cover each other, and wait for my signal. We move together. One mistake and we're dead. The soldiers pressed themselves against the mud and rocks, rain plastering them further, breath coming in ragged gasps. Alina's hands shook slightly, not from fear but from exhaustion, yet she forced herself to remain sharp. Every second counted. Through the rain-soaked chaos, Alina spotted an opportunity. The enemy's left flank was slightly exposed, distracted by the suppressing fire. She could exploit it, neutralize the threat, and create a path for her squad to advance. Listen carefully, she shouted. We're going to flank them. Left side moves quietly, suppressing fire only if necessary. Right side holds position. On my mark, we strike fast and precise. The squad nodded, mud-streaked faces set with grim determination. Jenkins muttered under his breath, all creeping into his disbelief. I can't believe we're about to follow her. Alina's pulse thundered in her ears. She counted down silently, watching the enemy's every twitch. Her eyes flicked between her squad and the targets ahead. Timing was everything. Now, she shouted, leading the left flank forward. The soldiers moved like shadows, low and precise. Suppressing fire from the right kept the enemy pinned. Alina's hands gripped her rifle, eyes blazing, heart pounding. Bullets whizzed past, ricocheting off trees and mud, but they moved forward inch by inch toward the enemy's flank. A sudden shout, a soldier from the enemy had spotted movement. Bullets tore through the air, striking mud and tree trunks. Alina ducked, pulling Jenkins down behind cover. Keep moving, don't stop, she yelled. Her squad surged, coordinated, disciplined despite exhaustion and fear. They reached the enemy's flank undetected, weapons raised, ready to strike. Alina's heart hammered, sweat and rain mixing on her brow, muscles screaming, but she kept control, her mind calculating each step, each movement. Cover fire, she shouted. Suppressing fire on my mark, 1, 2, 3, now. Bullets erupted from the left flank, forcing the enemy into cover. Alina and the rest of the squad charged, moving with precision, taking the enemy by surprise. Panic rippled through the opposing shooters as they were overwhelmed, their positions exposed, their momentum shattered. Alina's adrenaline surged. She barked orders with clarity and authority. Right flank, advance now, keep low, suppress if necessary, we take them out. The squad moved as one, a cohesive unit under her command. Each soldier trusted her, followed her lead, executed the plan flawlessly. The enemy tried to regroup, but it was too late. The ridge gave Alina's squad a commanding advantage, and she exploited it ruthlessly. Within moments, the enemy was forced to retreat, disorganized and demoralized. The rain continued to lash down, but for the first time, Alina allowed herself a fraction of relief. Her squad, battered and mud-soaked, had survived. And more than that, they had gained the upper hand. Alina sank to her knees behind a tree, breathing heavily. Her hands shook, muscles burning from exertion, but her mind was clear. For the first time, she understood the weight and responsibility of leadership. She had guided her squad through chaos, through near-death scenarios, and they had emerged victorious, not because she was fearless, but because she acted despite fear. Rix groaned weakly from behind her, bloodied but alive. Alina pressed her hands to his wound, murmuring reassurances. He nodded faintly, exhausted but alive. The squad gathered around Alina, faces pale, soaked, and mud-streaked. Jenkins muttered almost reverently, I can't believe we survived. Because of you. Raymond, still gripping his rifle, nodded. She let us. We're alive. Alina didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Survival had been a victory, but the storm still raged, the forest was still treacherous, and the enemy could regroup. But she allowed herself a brief moment to acknowledge the truth. She had led, and they had followed. She had transformed panic into precision, fear into action, and chaos into survival. And that realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. The forest around them still echoed with distant gunfire, the storm's relentless roar, and the distant crashes of falling trees. But Alina Morales, the recruit who had once frozen under fire, now stood as the commander her squad had needed. She took a deep breath, scanning the ridge, mind already calculating the next move. They weren't safe yet, but for the first time she believed they could survive. And she knew one thing with absolute certainty: the moment of reckoning wasn't over. The enemy was still out there, the forest was still alive with threats, and Alina Morales, drenched in mud, rain, and adrenaline, would face it head-on. Because she wasn't just surviving anymore. She was leading. The storm had reached its crescendo. Rain hammered the forest, relentless and unyielding. Thunder shook the treetops, rolling through the valleys like the roar of some ancient beast. Mud and debris coated every surface, every branch slick with water. Visibility was near zero, but Alina Morales stood atop the ridge, rifle raised, eyes scanning the chaotic tree line for the remaining enemy. Her squad crouched behind cover, mud-soaked, exhausted, but alive. Their faces, streaked with grime and rain, reflected a combination of fear, awe, and trust. Every one of them had survived through the sheer force of Alina's leadership, and now they looked to her for the final move, one that would determine if they lived or died. Rix lay behind them, weak but conscious, the bloodstain on his side a stark reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. Alina pressed a hand to his wound, murmuring reassurances, but her focus was already on the forest ahead. The enemy wasn't gone. They were still out there, scattered but capable, desperate and dangerous. Alina, Jenkins whispered, voice barely audible over the storm, we can't hold this ridge forever. They'll regroup. They won't, Alina interrupted, voice steady, commanding, sharp. We move forward. We strike now decisively and we finish this. Follow my lead, stay low and trust each other. We've come too far to hesitate. The squad nodded, gripping their rifles tighter. Fear still lurked in their eyes, but it had been tempered into determination, forged by hours of survival and Alina's unwavering leadership. Alina surveyed the terrain. Ahead lay a small clearing, partially obscured by fallen trees and thick underbrush, a perfect opportunity to force the enemy into a vulnerable position. The high ground gave her squad a strategic advantage, and the enemy's scattered formation made them exposed. She formulated the final plan quickly, mentally running through every possibility. "Left flank," she whispered urgently. "Jenkins and 2 others suppressing fire. Right flank holds here. The rest of us advance through the clearing fast and precise. We force them into our line of fire. No hesitation. Move on my signal." The soldiers obeyed, crouched low, moving into position. Each heartbeat was a drum of tension, adrenaline, and anticipation. The forest seemed to hold its breath, the storm itself pausing for the moment before the final push. 3, 2, 1 now, Elena shouted, signaling the left flank to open fire. Bullets erupted from the trees, tearing into the enemy's cover. The scattered shooters were forced down, scrambling to find any semblance of protection. Elena led the charge, moving through the mud and rain, rifle at the ready, guiding her squad as they surged through the clearing. The enemy fired sporadically, desperate, uncoordinated, but Elena's squad moved as one. Every command she had issued in the past hours crystallized into a flawless rhythm of action. Suppressing fire, flanking, advancing, covering, all executed with precision despite exhaustion and fear. A sniper round whizzed past Elena's ear, splintering a nearby tree. She didn't flinch. Instinct, training, and sheer determination drove her forward. "Keep moving, don't stop, cover each other." The squad surged, adrenaline fueling every step. Rain pelted their faces, mud clung to their uniforms, and every muscle screamed in protest. But the enemy was faltering. Disorganized, unprepared for the coordinated assault, they began to retreat, scattering through the forest in panic. Elena spotted one shooter attempting to hide behind a fallen log. She raised her rifle, aimed carefully, and fired. The enemy faltered, giving her squad a clear path to push forward. "Forward! We hold this line. No one falls behind." The soldiers moved as one, rising briefly to advance, then ducking behind cover, suppressing fire, keeping the enemy pinned. The tide had shifted. Elena's command, once uncertain and trembling, had transformed the squad into a cohesive force capable of dictating the battlefield. Rix groaned from behind cover, weak but alert. "Elena, you did this," he rasped, blood streaked across his uniform. She glanced back, muscles burning, heart pounding, rain plastered to her face. "We did this, sir," she replied firmly. "Everyone survived because we acted together, because we moved, because we didn't freeze." The enemy, realizing their attempts to regroup had failed, began a hasty retreat. Elena didn't pursue recklessly. She maintained control, guiding her squad into defensive positions, ensuring they weren't exposed to a counterattack. Every movement was calculated, deliberate, precise. "Hold positions," she commanded. "Watch the tree line, don't get complacent. They're retreating, but they're still dangerous." The squad pressed into position, rifles raised, eyes scanning the forest. Rain continued to pour, thunder rolled overhead, and the world seemed suspended between chaos and calm. Yet in that moment, amidst the storm and mud, a profound realization settled over Elena. She had led her squad through near-impossible circumstances, transforming panic into courage, fear into action. Jenkins approached, voice trembling. "Elena, I can't believe it. You actually did it. You led us through everything." Elena exhaled, muscles finally trembling with exhaustion. "We survived because we trusted each other, because we moved when we had to, and because we didn't freeze. Not now, not ever again." Raymond nodded, a rare smile breaking through the mud and grime. You're not just a recruit anymore. You're our leader." Elena's lips tightened, a mixture of pride, exhaustion, and relief. She glanced at Rix, who gave her a faint, approving nod. The man who had trained them, tested them, and been their commander had survived, and now he saw in her what the rest of the squad had witnessed firsthand: courage under fire, clarity amidst chaos, and a command presence forged in the crucible of life and death. The enemy, scattered and demoralized, had retreated into the forest, no longer an immediate threat. Alina allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, her body shaking from exertion, her mind racing with the enormity of what had just transpired. She had led her squad through a storm of bullets, mud, and fear, and they had survived. The rain began to lighten slightly, the thunder rolling off into the distance. The forest, though still treacherous and chaotic, had offered a fragile reprieve. Alina's squad gathered around her, wet, muddy, battered, but alive. She looked at each of them, eyes meeting theirs, seeing trust, respect, and something deeper. Belief. Belief in themselves, belief in her, belief that even in the darkest, most chaotic moments, they could survive together. Rick struggled to sit up, looking at Alina with a mixture of pride and disbelief. You took command when no one else could. You saved us all. Alina swallowed, exhaustion and relief washing over her. No one survives alone, sir. We did it together. The squad remained huddled, catching their breath, rain running down their faces, mud streaking their uniforms. But the storm outside wasn't the only storm they had endured. The emotional, mental, and physical trials of the past hours had transformed them all. Alina Morales, once a recruit who had panicked under fire, now stood as a leader who had faced chaos, fear, and death, and had emerged stronger, more capable, and undeniably in command. The forest was still alive with rain, thunder, and distant echoes of retreating footsteps, but the ridge, this small, mud-soaked, rain-drenched patch of earth, was theirs. Survival, for the moment, was theirs. And Alina, soaked, trembling, and exhausted, understood a profound truth. Courage wasn't the absence of fear. Leadership wasn't about rank or experience. Survival wasn't about skill alone. It was about acting decisively, with clarity in the face of terror and guiding others to do the same. The squad looked at her, not as a rookie, not as a follower, but as a commander, someone who had led them through fire and mud, bullets and storm, panic and chaos. And in that rain-soaked, mud-covered, adrenaline-fueled moment, Alina Morales knew something she had never known before. She had become the soldier, and the leader she was always meant to be. The storm began to wane, the rain lightening, the thunder rolling off into the distance. The forest, though still wet and treacherous, seemed to exhale a collective sigh. The battle was over for now. But the memory of that ridge, that storm, that relentless test of courage and command, would remain with Alina and her squad forever. They had survived, they had endured, and they had emerged stronger, bound together by trust, fear, and the undeniable proof that leadership could rise from the most unexpected place. Alina Morales, the recruit who had panicked under fire, had not just survived the storm. She had saved them all.